permission, with the exception of those who are having an extended tea session outside, from the rest, if I have your permission, I would like to start with the second session. I consider this going to be a very interesting session. And the way I want to structure it, this is also happening for the first time, and I'm also doing this type of interview for the first time. So I hope everything goes well, and if you find me making a fox paw, please excuse me. Friends, we have two eminent gentlemen, something that could be a matter of envy to any president of IEEMA. And I'm getting an opportunity to be talking to these eminent people, eliciting from them as to how they became eminent in their respective fields, what did they do, and in the end, to understand if we have lessons for the captains of industry who are present here, of the electrical industry, lessons to learn from them as to how we can apply those principles in our own businesses and make our businesses successful on the ground, especially in these difficult days. This was the perception that I and the Secretariat had in mind before planning this session. I hope, even if in a small measure we are able to achieve this objective, this would be a grand success on our initial work. I would like to introduce two people who hardly need any introduction. That's what makes my job even more difficult. Padma Vibhushan Tarun Das ji. Anyone who's been associated with industry, how would he not know Tarun Das? How would he not know that he brought into existence CII, the premier industry and business association of the country today, and was instrumental in taking CII to the level where it is today. And it's a long journey, 44 years of journey of Mr. Tarun Das for bringing up CII to the position. And he has written a book, Crossing Frontiers, which I would recommend to all those who have an ambition to work in the association, who are enamored by what the association can achieve and can do on the ground for its members. And it's an insightful addition to your existing knowledge. Friends, while Mr. Tarun Das worked for a single-minded devotion and passion for CII, and for which he's got enough kudos from everywhere. The Indian government has given him Padma Vibhushan. The British government has given him Order of the British Empire. Is that right, sir? Do I announce it correctly? Something like that. Well, I couldn't bother about not understanding these British awards. And the list of what he's been able to achieve within CII and after CII is phenomenal. If I were to read it, we'll probably end this session without moving further. So let's skip it. And I would like to pay my own personal tribute to that passion of Tarun Das. और सर, अगर गुस्ताखी माफ हो, तो मैं अर्ज करूंगा, कैसे मुमकिन था किसी और दवा से इलाज? गालिब, इश्क का रोग था, फितरत पूरी होने पर ही आराम आया. That was his passion for CII, and it was worse than a ishq. In ishq, people have some less of madness, but here it was full of madness. And only when he achieved it, no dawa helped. It was achieving that fitrat, jisse unko aaram aaya. Sir, with these words, I would like to present you to the audience. The next gentleman we have today is Anil Saroop, a friend and well-wisher of IEEMA. He really does not need introduction for a variety of reasons. Number one, The Honorable Prime Minister talks about him. The Honorable Prime Minister frequently talks about the achievement of his government in the coal sector. If the Prime Minister talks about a person, who am I to introduce him? And even otherwise, IEEMA has had the privilege of hearing him on more than one occasion in the past. And we have the privilege of having Mr. Anil Swarup again with us. Mr. Anil Swarup is a IAS, a bureaucrat from the UP cadre. And because of that, I've had a privilege of knowing him for the past, well, more than 20 years. And it started with a great fight that I had with him. Both of us thought that we were right, and finally we became friends. But now he tells me that he's had a fight even with his minister very recently, so I feel elated. I was not the only one who had a fight with him. His ministers also had his fighting. He's got an introduction to his fighting. But all of you would be knowing as to the magic he has done in the coal sector. There was a time when no IAS officer of that seniority wanted to go to that ministry. In Hindi, they used to say, "Jisne koile ke mein haath dala, uska hua haath kala." Really, that was the situation with what had happened with two previous coal secretaries, fine gentlemen, finest people, I'm told, in their own right, and with the ignominy that they had to suffer. No serious thinking career bureaucrat wanted to get into the coal ministry. And it was only Anil Swarup who accepted that challenge. Not only accepted it, he showed what could be done in a very small period in that coal sector. What was an enigma to the Indian economy? You all know, friends, that coal is not in short supply anymore. It's in excess. Today, the thermal plants are not ready to lift coal. They already have 20 days of stocks. The distribution companies don't want to buy their power because they don't have money. The thermal plants don't want to buy coal. So there's no problem of coal. And he continues to get the coal mining done. But that is one part of the story which I have picked up from newspapers, and I am talking to you. But I've had some insights into his earlier career as a junior IAS officer in the state. And this passion that he's had is not something which has come overnight after he's become the Secretary Government of India. He shared it even in the early days when I had an occasion to interact with him when he used to be the director of Udyog Bandhu. Udyog Bandhu in UP is a body which is supposed to take care of the industries in UP. And he brought in a sea change of how things were talked and ultimately the satisfaction level of the people who were running their industries in UP. And then various occasions about which I'll have an occasion to talk. And sir, I'd be missing in my responsibility if I were not to read a share for you. तारीफ करे भी उनकी तो कैसे? तारीफ करे भी उनकी तो कैसे? वो लफ्जों में समाते ही कहाँ है? Anil Swarup ji, I present you to my IEEMA audience. And friends, I'm supposed to be interviewing them. It's supposed to be an informal chat and discussion. The way I want to structure is that I will put something like about 10 or 11 questions. And most of these questions, I think the 6 or 7 would be common questions to both the panelists. And 3 or 4 might be individual to each one of them. We'll spend about an hour in doing this. So we have, sir, about 5 to 6 minutes for each question for both of you to respond. You can increase on somewhere, you can reduce on somewhere. Feel free to speak what you want, not necessarily limit yourself to what I'm asking. And thereafter, we are very keen to have an open session, a question-answer session, where you start shooting, well, questions and nothing else, on the 2 eminent visitors we have here. So be ready with your paper and pencil to write your questions. The first question I want to put up to you, sir, is I have seen in both of you that you have shared a common vision, a common trait, where both of you have shown hope for the future. In your own words, as you say, you are a die-hard optimist, and that's true about Tarun Das also. And you have been dreaming new dreams, big dreams. And another thing that I have seen, that all these dreams have been much ahead of times. Tarun Das ji, I would like you to respond on that, share your experiences, and thereafter I'll answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agarwal. Before I respond to your question, I want to say one or two things. First of all, it's tremendous for me to be here at IEEMA. This is an association which I have respected and continue to respect enormously. So it's a privilege for me to be here. I am grateful to you for asking me. This association has been built by your past presidents and outstanding staff, outstanding secretariat over many years. And I have always looked at IEEMA with huge respect. So I wanted to mention that. Second, you are a problem. Yes, you are a problem because you are going to do secretariats out of a job. Because you gave the most amazing, extempore, articulate, clear speech today at the AGM, which I have not heard in my 50 years. So, tremendous congratulations to you. But I think Sunil Mishra will have to be worrying if he has too many presidents like that. Because the secretary is supposed to write your speech for you. So that was the second comment that I wanted to make. And finally, I want to say something about the gentleman on my left. See, last night I learned, as we were sitting together, that he's 58. But he looks 38, you know. And he has, as you said, an amazing track record in the government. And I think, I don't think, if he's 58, that means he's got 2 years to go in the government. I don't think that this government and this Prime Minister is going to let him go. He will be there in some form, and he must be there, because he is outstanding man of action. So that's my preface. You know, I joined the CII, or before that, what it was called IEA, as a trainee in my first job. And it was a bad time in Calcutta. It was the Marxists were taking over. And then, miracle of miracles, we managed to merge the two associations, one under Indian Chamber of Commerce, one under Bengal Chamber of Commerce, and move to Delhi. It was the time just before the emergency was declared. But as I've written in my book, we were dreaming dreams of India. That India, with, you know, those of you, not many are young people here, but those of you who go back to the 70s will remember those are very bad times in India. So you could just go down, you could sink and say there is no future here, this country is finished. And industry was going through a very bad time also. Controls, mistrust of industry, mistrust of private sector, micromanagement, you know, in every respect. But we thought that this country had something in it which we could not see at that time. And the merger of two associations of dissimilar people. After all, the Engineering Association of India was formed by Mr. B.M. Birla and was essentially the Marwari businessmen were there. The Indian Engineering Association were the inheritors of the British companies, Braithwaite, Byrne, Jessup, and company like that, and Tatas. But Tatas were in both. Nobody could think that we could amalgamate. But the times were so bad in India that the businessmen of both sides said, we have to get together, otherwise we have no say in what happens in the future. And that is how the dreaming started. That if we can get together, in the talks to build this new organization, 6 months we were held up once because one association suggested a particular businessman to be the vice president in the first. And for 6 months, the other association said, that fellow is not acceptable. It was because it becomes like that sometimes. Personalities become like, make a difference. But we got over that hump. We created the association. They said, if we can agree amongst people who were enemies of each other, then we can do something more. And the first thing we said, we will not ask government for anything. We go to Delhi, we'll organize a trade fair. And the trade fair will market and project the industry and its capabilities. And government will come and see what industry has achieved in this country. So that's how the dreaming started. And one by one, things worked out. I should stop now.
Thank you, sir. And I think there we have a lesson as to how we are going to dream about IEEMA becoming big and bigger by the day. Anil Sarupji, the advantage you had was that you were on the opposite side of the table. And both Tarun Das and me have been on this side. We belong to the private sector.
No, I never thought that I was on the other side of the table. I thought we were on the same
fact
side.
was, as a bureaucrat,
In fact, that made all the difference.
of the elite IAS service, I always saw you sitting, except for today, on the same side of the table. But that was the difference. Between you, there have been a lot of outstanding IAS people. Each one of us have known them, who are brilliant, who are very helpful to industry. But there was some extra spark in you which identified you, and that is how we called you here. And that's why PM Modi talks about you. Sir, you had similar situations, what we said. Hope, your hope into what India could do, and your hope what UP can do even today. You have not lost that hope. Most of us have gone senile and have lost hope in what UP can do, but you still nurture that hope. And you dreamt big. I would like you to talk about it, please.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me here. I am really privileged to be in company of Mr. Tarun Das, who I have had the occasion to interact only once, but I have looked up to him on what he's done. I have always believed that this whole nonsense of difference between public and private sector does not really exist. The fundamental traits of doing well are the same, whether it's there or here. And it is in that sense I'd like to share with you a small story, a personal experience, slightly on a lighter note, because it's becoming very heavy, on where I and how I learned my lessons and what is my approach to doing things. Probably it could apply to anyone. Before I joined the IS, I was in the police service. One day, a batchmate of mine approached me and said, "Boss, raat ko neend nahi aa rahi." So I asked him, "Bhai, kya ho gaya? Kyun nahi aa rahi neend?" "Boss, petroleum ke daam bahut बढ़ रहे हैं." So I asked him, "यार तुम कुछ कर सकते हो उसका?" "यार कर तो नहीं सकते." तो हमने कहा, जिसके बारे में कर नहीं सकते उसके लिए रात की नींद क्यों हराम कर रहे हो? तो हाँ यार, बात तो सही कह रहा हो. He went away. 3 months down the line he came again. "Boss, यार फिर रात को नींद नहीं आ रही." हमने कहा, "अब तो पेट्रोल के दाम ठीक हो गए?" बोले, "नहीं नहीं बॉस, इंडिया की पॉपुलेशन बहुत बढ़ रही है." तो I told him, रात को सो जाओ, अपने आप ठीक हो जाएगी. See, the point that I'm trying to make here is, most of us are perhaps inherently revolutionary. We want to change the world. Ye bhi karo, wo bhi karo, without realizing what can be done. More so in government. I have not much of an experience in the private sector per se. But I think much of our cynicism is born out of purely dreaming, whereas dreams are absolutely essential. But if we don't have our feet firmly on the ground, then it is a disaster. You become cynical. I have seen a lot of fellow bureaucrats, right-thinking, very nice people, but becoming cynical very soon. I think management is all the art of possible, whether it's private sector or public sector. We have to define our boundaries and then gradually expand those boundaries. In my understanding of history, almost all revolutions in the world have led to dictatorships. So when I became a bureaucrat, I still tell my fellow colleagues, we are not here to bring about a revolution. It can be a faster evolution. But if you try and destroy, I mean, there is a destructionist approach I see all around me, even the political domain. You know, it's easiest thing is on the earth is to destroy. What about construction part? So if you don't have that, and probably with that in mind, I started dreaming. I dream a lot. I daydream a lot. Visualize. And in order to fructify those dreams, to make those dreams happen, then I look at it very, very realistically. That could be true of any organization, that could be true of any individual, that could be true of government, that could be true of anybody. Because the bottom line is, what you do on the ground, how do you make things happen? You know, I come from UP, and there are so many Rai Sahabs there, advisors, you know, literally and otherwise. Now you have institutional advisors who will advise and then go away. The ultimate bottom line is walking that talk, walking that dream. So everything will be determined on what actually gets finally delivered on the ground. Because the easiest thing is to talk the talk. I think a difficult thing is to walk the walk. And if we are able to do that, then my talk will also carry a lot of substance. So you can then go and talk about it. I remember when I took over as school secretary, best of my friends were sympathizing with me. Yaar, kahan phas gaye? Sambhal ke chalna. Bada gadbad hai, kya hai? For the first time in my career, I had a bit of a doubt in my mind. I had never had that doubt, ever. But when I walked into Shastri Bhavan, as he rightly called it, because I was looking for a term for that, कि अजीब जंगल सा है, वहाँ बंदर ज़्यादा आदमी कम है. And some of us also joined that gang on occasions. So, वहाँ पे the atmosphere, you all can't believe it. No one wanted to take a decision, and rightly so. No one wanted to act. I have never seen that atmosphere ever. And if anything that has happened in past 1 year in coal is to bring that, the whole atmosphere of distrust, of diffidence, of negativity, turning it around. And though I may have jokingly shared with Mr. Agrawal that I had a fight with the minister, I think the amount of support that he gave me was absolutely amazing. On occasions, it was so embarrassing that he passed on all the credit to me, whereas actually he was giving us all the direction and all the support. So it's been an amazing journey. As we go along, I'll share some of the other aspects of what and how it happened. I'm not very sure whether they will be applicable to people sitting here, but I have always believed that the fundamental principles of management remain the same, whether it is in the public sector or the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anil Bhai. My second question, which I think also applies to both of you, that although you are separated in a time frame by 20 years plus, but both of you have operated in an environment which was full of mistrust for you. In the association, when you went to the government, everybody thought you have some axe to grind. Nobody believed that you want to partner with government and be a support to them. The bureaucrats are known by three varieties. Very honest, but no output, no work. That's category 1. Category 2, lots of output, but they have an axe to grind. And number 3, that they don't have an axe to grind and they still give an output unabashedly. Now, most of us, I do not know if the third category is in a minority or a majority. I won't pass any remark on that. But most of us remember the first two categories and classify and deem to think that bureaucrats belong to one of these two categories only. And that is the mistrust you face in dealing with the core constituency, the public for whose service the bureaucrat is meant to deliver. I would like Tarun Das ji to really dwell on that and tell us how to become successful even in that environment of distrust.
So I take you back again to 74, 75. We had no credibility, very few staff, no branding, nobody knew us. we represented the engineering industry. And at that time also, there was a Department of Heavy Industry, which was the administrative ministry for the engineering industry. So first port of call for us was the Department of Heavy Industry. I was saying to Mr. Swaroop as we were sitting there, a little bit about, the heavy industry ministry of the old days. It was an amazing ministry, And by the way, the power of a ministry, it depends on the work that it does. You see? I mean, the minister has said to you today, basically, that he will take you to the finance minister. You have to take him up on that. He has to deliver on that, and he will deliver, and that's what we did. We went to the Department of Heavy Industry. We got to know the secretary, the additional secretary, the joint secretaries, the deputy secretary, the director, everybody at every level, to tell them about us, that this was a new organization, there were new issues. There were a lot of issues for engineering industry in those days. And through working together, we built trust. And we never told a lie about it, because we needed their support for industry. We needed them to support the engineering industry. We could not get it if we did not, because then they became, in fact, our spokesman with Prime Minister's office, with Finance Ministry, with everybody. They took us, they sponsored our request for land in Delhi so that we could have an office building, It took 3 years, doesn't matter. But it was the Department of Heavy Industry, which was our first port of call and the most important port of call. And in a way, we empowered them. We gave them data. We helped them to become more powerful within the government, We gave them information which they didn't have. So while they were supposed to look after more public sector, because they had many public sector units, but we made sure that they looked after both public and private sector. The situation is still the same. Their purview is still the same. So that was our first port of call. And that is where we basically put our camp down, Udyog Bhavan, gate number 7. The security guard of Udyog Bhavan, gate number 7, would see in those days, AII people coming every day. Not only me, my colleagues and others going, depending on the subject and the issue, and going from top to bottom, not only to the secretary, because we needed to, you build a rapport with the secretary, the joint secretary may feel, arey, wo to bada sahab ke paas, different. The deputy secretary who actually writes the notes on the file could feel upset. So we worked with everybody, and it worked for us. We were able to build that trust, and eventually that trust did not go. It's very easy to lose trust. It takes a long time to build trust, but I think it stayed, and we stayed the course that, this is worked for us, and then, it took us into all the other ministries that we had to deal with. Steel ministry, because they're providing, and steel was completely controlled in those days, for example, and all the other ministries. So that is the way we went, step by step. What he says, I'm a dreamer. I don't know whether we are born in the same month or not, but I'm a dreamer. But dream, I want to do this. Then do this, then go to the next one, So sequentially, build your capability, build your track record.
I totally agree with you. I think trust is the key, and it is the key within the bureaucracy, and as you interface with the outsiders. Within the bureaucracy, it's very important, because I think much of the problem that the government has is because we don't trust each other. And I have been discussing this with my colleagues. How easy does your life become if you start trusting people? Because trust actually begets trust. Without trust, you will not be able to delegate. So even now you have secretaries in the government who are sitting till late in the night correcting a draft of a letter. And let me let out a secret here. I don't sit beyond 6:30 in the evening in the office, even as coal secretary. And I don't call a meeting after 5:30. If someone else calls a meeting, fair enough. But I don't do it. How am I able to do that? How am I able to be here and yesterday in Bangalore and Monday again in Bombay? Because I have such a fantastic team that they are able to do all the work. I mean, I don't convene a meeting. I have maximum 3 to 4 meetings a month because the work is clearly outlined and my guys have to come to me in case they have a problem. The problem is a guy who's put in 20, 25 years of service is good enough. And let me look at the other fundamental issue. Why would an individual not do what he has to do? I mean, I start by assuming that everyone wants to do good work. Why wouldn't he? If my assumption is everyone is a badmash, then I would not trust him. I would rather have an exception be dealt with separately than treat everyone with distrust. Because it makes my life extremely, extremely easy. Because once you trust, as I said, once you trust a person, you start delegating. Once you start delegating, that you are focusing on larger issues rather than micromanaging. So for me, trust is absolutely practical. Now let me come to the other aspect of it. When we interact with industry in terms of trust, there again, my assumption is that each of the industry wants to do its job well. Why wouldn't they? In fact, you all will be surprised that wherever I have worked, I have not had targets in terms of physical terms. The reason is, you create a situation where there is a value proposition for the stakeholder and he does on his own. I remember when I was doing this scheme called Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, and I was having a discussion with the then Planning Commission, they asked me for targets. I said, we don't have targets. How many people will you enroll? How many people will go to the hospital? I said, how am I concerned? If a guy is ill, he will go to the hospital. I have to create those facilitating conditions, whereas he is not inhibited from going to the hospital. Beyond it, I can't push him into a hospital. Similarly, I create a business proposition for the insurance companies to enroll as many people as possible. I create a system where it is facilitated. I create a system where there is a wrong person doesn't get enrolled, period. Thereafter, how am I concerned about numbers? Because I trust the insurance company, I trust the hospital. Now, there would be exceptions. Trust doesn't mean that there won't be exceptions. I should have a system to deal with that exception. It's not that everything has gone hunky-dory. There have been problems. Even in coal auction, I trusted the industry. And that's why it went well. But there are few people who betrayed that trust, 3, 4 of them. But because of those 3, 4 of them, should I distrust the entire industry? I trust people because I am happy if I trust them.
That's the
And ultimately,
only way you can sleep at night.
absolutely. And ultimately, it is your own happiness that matters. Why do you do anything? What is the rationale for doing? Because you get a kick out of doing things. Or you feel good about it. Or you feel happy about it. Now, if I distrust people, I know I won't be happy. So it's a very selfish way of doing things. I'm very selfish about it. I feel happy trusting people, so I trust people.
Okay, that was wonderful. And I think a lesson for all of us who are real practical managers in life. Trust your colleague, trust your subordinate, and you'll be able to sleep well at night. The first thing I've learned here. Great, sir. My next question is, both of you have interacted with politicians of different colors, hues, and shades and political belief. Mr. Das, I know very well that when in 91, the liberalization was started, and you took it upon yourself to convince the states to come on board. The communists told you everything short of throwing you out of their office. I don't know if they really meant that. And they said, Desh bechna kyon chahte ho, or something to that effect, sir. Then you build partnerships, and CII today, most of us who would have worked over there would know that they hold annual sessions with the MPs at state level, CII state levels, because they believe in being proactive in formulation of policy. So that's my question, and to you, Tarunji, and to Anil Bhai. I think for a IAS bureaucrat, his day starts with the minister calling him and his day ends with the minister calling him or not calling him. I really don't know. It probably depends on the bureaucrat also. And knowing you a little bit that I do, I know it won't make a difference to you, and you have the courage to tell your chief minister, sir, I won't be able to do it. And you have done that in the past, with what the chief minister did not like. Sir, I would like you to talk about that, about your experience. And in addition for you, sir, in spite of those difficult circumstances where the chief minister wanted to give you a punishment posting, you did something which no other bureaucrat had done before, and I probably know not even after you left that place. Tarunji, please.
From that time when we moved to Delhi in 74 November to early 1991, middle of 1991, our focus was the bureaucracy. We really worked and built a partnership with the administration, the civil service at every level. And of course, ministers who we had to deal with. We were not connected at all or engaged with the MPs. It was 1991, first liberalization announcements, uproar, reaction, especially from the left parties. And the finance minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who I had known since he was economic advisor in the 70s, and we worked a lot together with finance ministry at that time. He said to me, he said, can you start a dialogue with the MPs independently of government? Okay, it was new to us, this is how to get hold of MPs, different political parties. So we thought, since our roots were from Calcutta originally, and many of the MPs were known, one of the senior most was Somnath Chatterjee, who later became speaker. Let us approach the West Bengal MPs. And Somnath Chatterjee said, fine, let's have a meeting. We'll do it in Bengal Bhavan in Delhi, which was fine, followed by dinner during parliament session when MPs are there, and avoiding the Friday to Sunday when they go back to their homes, wherever they come from. And that first meeting, we had industry people from Calcutta, our office bearers, all the MPs, Somnath Chatterjee were there. That is when we were told, you are selling out the country because you are pushing for liberalization, you're cooperating with this government, and all that. But it was a very good way to start. It's good to start, you bat on a tough wicket. You then get used to, you expect that it's going to be difficult, so you work harder at that. And we went state by state. And we made presentations in Tamil, in Telugu, in Kannada, in Hindi, in Marathi, in Gujarati, because whichever state you're meeting, they were comfortable in their local language, in their mother tongue. So we use the mother tongue. And we have members everywhere. So we'd call those members into Delhi. We would do it in the State Bhavan, where they were comfortable. Many of them were staying there because they may not have got their quarters and all. And it worked out very well. We built a rapport across all parties, and we were very clear that we were not going to be partisan. Even then, if I fast forward to 1998, when the BJP came with their government, they were suspicious of us that we were pro-Congress, because Congress had been in power. It had nothing to do with, we had to work with them because they were in government. But we worked with every party, and right across, by that time, different parties were ruling in different states. It was not easy. We didn't have PowerPoint presentations in those days, but eventually we realized that we have to have something called a public policy group, a public policy committee to deal with the MPs, and in the staff, the public policy head and team. In fact, Sunil Mishra was head of the public policy team of CII. One of his key jobs, he's had many tough and dirty jobs to do in CII, but I thought he needed to, be rugged a lot. But one of his tough jobs was dealing with public policy and dealing with MPs which he did very well. But great challenge, but worth doing.
I would just like to inform you that for last 2 years, we've created a public policy cell within IEEMA. The lady you see in front of you, she was leading it. Now she's been kicked up as the vice president this year. Very persuasive. Good she hasn't met you. Otherwise, she would ensure that you attend each and every of the EC meetings of IEEMA, at least during her presidency. But we've had some experience of it, not as much as CII would have. And let me also tell you, very satisfying, very helpful. And today the environment has changed. People are receptive when we go to them. In fact, they want us to come to them and tell them of everything.
Can I just add one more point? I mean, we got to a stage when we could actually give them drafts of letters for them to write. We got to a stage when they would ask questions in Parliament based on our briefing. So they became our spokespersons in Parliament and with the government on issues which were troubling industry.
It's indeed very unfortunate that despite being a democracy, we use every occasion to criticize the politicians without realizing that they live in a world which is a very difficult world. Once you understand that, your association with them will change. Because we tend to blame the politician for everything under the sun, all of us. And that's the topic of discussion wherever you go. Because the easiest thing, everyone is blaming the politician without realizing the difficult work that they have to do. And it is not only in the context of politician, whoever you come across, we must first appreciate the limitation of that individual or an institution. Our association with that institution or an individual would be much better. I have learned it the hard way as I went up the ladder, bureaucratic ladder. And I came across politicians of all shapes and sizes, initially being transferred out. And as I ultimately realized that for a bureaucrat, transfer is like death, it is inevitable. But like an individual, you get reborn again, and you can continue to do your karma. Don't bother about when you die. So once we forget about the transfer thing, then you can actually do your job very well. And the politician also knows that he will not be bothered about the transfer. So my arrangement with the government is that the government decides where they want to use me. Thereafter, I do what I have to do. If they still dislike me, they can throw me out. I go there, no heart burning. Absolutely no. So what has happened is, having worked in the secretariat of Miss Mayawati, with Mr. Kalyan Singh, both secretaries, very different people. But once you understand the limitations of those individuals, you understand your limitations, because the bottom line is that you have to do what you got to do. Again, going back to what I had said earlier, if you're not a revolutionary, you will evolve. You will understand what you can do, and then gradually increase your domain. So I have had a reasonably good relationship with the ministers, with the politicians that I have worked with. And the present one is a great person. I mean, the amount of support that he is giving me is phenomenal. He left me alone wherever I have to be left alone. Initially, of course, there is some adjustment that you've got to make. But once that happens, it moves. What we all have to understand, whether in the private sector or in the government, is that being a democracy, the ultimate call will have to be taken by a politician. So why fight with them? If I have the convincing capabilities, if I have the reason behind me, if I'm able to package my idea appropriately and present it in a manner that it needs to be presented, it will happen. The problem with me is that I'm unable to articulate my ideas in a manner that becomes acceptable to the politician. For example, and this probably is a suggestion to you all also, that when you go to the government, you go with a set of documents, and they are similar set of, or same set of documents, which you hand over to the minister, to the secretary, to the joint secretary, to the deputy secretary, little realizing that the minister will have not the time to go through the whole entire fat document. Can we think in terms of a separate set of document for the minister, separate one for the secretary? It requires a lot of effort, but that's how it is. When you sell Coca-Cola or any other product that you have, you design your product on the basis of the requirement of the consumer. Here is a set of consumers, and the requirements are very different, but we give them the same product. and say that he's not even read my document. You don't expect a minister to go through the document of 100 pages. He can't, even if he wants to. So I think we have to look inwards and see, and look at politicians as people who can facilitate. Look at what the minister said today. I mean, he's given an open offer to facilitate this. We should not lose this opportunity. Use that opportunity. He may not have as much time as he may have said, but at least he's conveyed in front of all of you what he wants to do. So let us look at the positive part of the politics that we have, and there's a lot of positive in it, especially the current environment. I can assure you, and I've been sitting on the hottest seat that you can think of in the past 1 year. I haven't got a single call to favor anybody. And that's making a huge statement. In the 35 years of my bureaucratic experience, I've never had such an experience ever. So let's leverage that. Let's make use of the political environment that exists there and push whatever we can. Thank you.
Based on what we have talked so far, I think the core issue that I'm getting to understand, that whether it is running an association, whether it is running a business, or whether you are a bureaucrat at the senior level, delivery is the main issue, which comes by a systematic approach to problem solving. And the problem solving which I have seen commonly in both of you is you research on data. It's a data-based approach with a reliable data, and thereafter you stand by that data and you create a trust where the other party also depends on the data which you are submitting. Tarunji, you've been an advocate of this approach, and that made a difference in CII with the other peer associations of that time. You went and supported your arguments with well-researched data. Anilji, even though you are in the government, you go all the way, and you have had no hesitation in telling even our members, and we know how busy you would be, do this, present a paper, send it to him, mark me a copy, and I know you will read through it. Now, I would like you to share your experience, both of you. Tarunji, start.
You know, we found that at that time, you know, I was only 35 years old when I went to Delhi. And I think the association took a risk on me because there were many more senior people who wanted the job. And a 35-year-old heading an association, it was not an institution then, it was a small association. And the secretaries to government were all in their late 50s. So you can imagine the gap of a different generation, you know. A 35-year-old, my staff were by and large in their late 20s and early 30s. Bunch of babies, you know, let loose in the jungle of Delhi. And the only way we could get through was to get our facts right. And we had to persuade the companies to give us the data to be able to, you know, put it across properly and to be effective and to solve the problems, because the industry had so many problems, and we had to solve problems to build our credibility with you, with our members, you know. Otherwise, why should you come to us, you know? And this distinguished us from the chambers of commerce, who are much more confrontationist with the government, going much more to the media, saying things are not working, and much more general in their statements. We kept a low profile, and we worked with the civil service and worked with data in getting this done. But, you know, I had amazing staff. The youngsters, the passion, and this trust that Mr. Swaroop has talked about was important. You trust them. 1 out of 100 may let you down, but 99 boys and girls will make it, you know, for you. You can't do it, you know, you can't do it on your own. So you have to have that team. And we built that team in a kind of a seamless way, just through giving them space. Our regional office in Madras, we got state offices, state governments dealing with them, always had a regional director who was from Tamil Nadu. And in 1981, I decided to send a North Indian to Madras as a regional director. I got a written petition from the Southern Region Committee members saying you cannot send a non-Tamilian to Madras. You cannot send a North Indian who cannot speak Tamil. I said I will not change my decision unless this boy, who was 25 years old, makes a mess of it. So I sent him. 3 years later, I transferred him to Calcutta, which was the worst job in the organization, dealing with the Bengalis and the Bengal government. I can say that because I'm a Bengali. When he was leaving Madras, the committee wrote to me saying, please don't take him away. He's so good. We don't mind if you send us a non-Tamilian over here anymore, because you sent us an outstanding guy. He had earned the trust of the local industry, the local state government, and Tamil Nadu governments keep changing all the time and there are a lot of issues. But I think you can make it. You can do anything in India, actually. You can do anything in India. If you set your heart and your mind to it, and you're willing to work at it, you're willing to struggle for it, you can achieve anything. And that has been my experience in life.
I think data is the key, and today we have the technology to use and crunch data. In the assignment just before this one, about which I spoke during the last AGM, I could use technology and technology data to set up an office which does not have a file. Probably that's the only office that doesn't have a file. I have an allergy to files, actually. As a bureaucrat, it's difficult. But I have serious allergy. So first thing that I do when I go to an office to see I have to get rid of these files. And it's not that difficult now. I can write a paper. I think I will write a paper. If you look at the files that come to you, and that could be true of any organization, there's a lot of communication that is happening with regard to seeking information and sending information. Now, all those files can be dispensed with. And in government, 60% of files, you're either seeking information or sending information. Now, how does it happen in government? Suppose I want an information from my field offices. So I'll ask some officer, he'll put up a note on file with a letter, which I'll see correct draft, I sign it. It goes back to the dispatch section, put in a lifafa, sent to that office. In that office, the senior officer will open it, then mark it to somebody. It will go down the ladder. If they have the information, they'll put it along with the letter. If they don't have the information, they will write to somebody else. Then the same exercise is done. That lifafa is closed and then opened. And then the information flows upwards. It comes to me finally. Now this takes days together. Now, if we put all this information on the portal and ask the guy to update that regularly, you don't have to do anything. Believe me, I get maximum 15 files a day. Now I'm revealing too many secrets today. But that can happen provided we use technology and data to understand what is going right and what is going wrong where. And I remember, again, the scheme I can never forget is the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, arguably the biggest health insurance scheme in the world, and certainly the only paperless, cashless health insurance scheme in the world for the poorest of the poor. And we could do that because through that, on a regular basis, on a daily basis, the data flows from 12,000 hospitals, remote parts of the country, to a server. And you can actually analyze the data. And once I was asked to make a presentation by UN Women, about the impact of that scheme on women. It took me up just about an hour to just crunch that data and see what was happening to women, and I could make that presentation. So to me, data is the key. It actually empowers you. And the other thing which is important is, a lot of data is available elsewhere. You may not be even aware of that. And it is in partnership with the private sector, because the problem is faced by somebody, and that's in the private sector. So the best way to go about doing your job, at least in the bureaucracy, is to ask the people, where is it pinching, how is it pinching, and I not only do that, whoever comes me with a problem, I tell him, please also suggest a few solutions, because I don't have solutions to all your problems. And half of them don't come back to me because they don't know the solution to the problem that they have. But whoever comes, you get an idea, as you rightly put it, then you can become an advocate, because you start believing in it. It is a question of internalizing a problem that is not yours, but it belongs to the country or your institution, or you are associated with it. The sooner you internalize, and that internalization is helped through data. Because otherwise it's just guesswork, you're making statements like saying, Sarkar, itna jyada corruption hai, kuch karo, to theek hai, we can have one-day seminar on removing corruption, not arriving at any place. But you have specific data, then you can come to a specific conclusion, then you can have a specific action plan, which is eminently doable. That's where data helps you.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to make both of you aware that IEEMA was one of the earliest organizations, and I have all the past presidents here who thought about collecting data from all the members, collating it, and creating a price variation formula. To you, Tarun Das ji, and to you, Anil ji. As I mentioned, most of our equipment is purchased by government, public utilities. They must be paying thousands of crores, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of price variation clause based on data which is collated and circulated by IEEMA. It does not go to the Auditor General, CAG. It is not audited by the state AGs. And it created a problem for us, sir, from the association angle. For many years we were known, IEEMA was known as an organization which gives PVC data. I went around telling them we do something more also, bhaiya, not PVC data alone. We do something more than PVC data. But believe me, sir, it's been scrupulously kept. I'll narrate a small incident. I'll also like to let out a secret today. During my presidency this year, somebody rang me up one day. He said, Vishnuji, have you seen the latest PVC for the transformers? I said, no, I have not seen it, but I'll see it. What are you doing? You are the president and the transformers fellows are getting hit and you are sleeping about it. What is this? Do something about it. I said, see, you've got to understand how IEEMA works. I would very much like to make a couple of crores on the side, if I could. But if you want me to get the price index change, I'm sorry. Even after wishing it, no president can afford to do it. He doesn't have the authority, and the gentleman in the IEEMA secretariat, I can sack him. Yes, I have that authority. But even if I were to tell him that instead of 32 paisa, you make it 33 paisa, he'll tell me, sorry, sir. I think that's the level of credibility we've had, and that's why it is acceptable and doesn't go to CAG. I said, I can't help you on that. I can help you on something else. I'll make sure that you get access and have a look at our data. Audit it. It's open data. We go to the utilities. We encourage utilities to come and examine our data and satisfy themselves that our data is correct. I said, I'll ensure that even as a member you have that. And if it is wrong, you don't have to come to me. The fellow who collates the data would correct it without waiting for me. That's his job. Sir, you mentioned that when you ask for a solution, half of them don't turn up. I think in my case, it was 100% who didn't turn up because only one fellow came. Sir, my next question is, both of you have been extremely successful people. And I think all my friends out here who are practicing managers, owners, responsible for creating results, would like to know what is that secret mantra you have which you can share with our people for success. Very difficult question because there cannot be one single mantra for success. But yet, an insight into what you think could be a mantra which our people could emulate.
in an association, there are all kinds of people with different backgrounds, different sizes of industry, different experiences, different views. If you want to achieve anything, then you have to carry people together. If you can't carry people together, then you can't get anything done. And actually, you can't build an institution if you can't step by step carry people together, have some achievements, have some success. Institution, as an institution, flows out of all this. Institution is it's not ready-made, born. You have to create and build the institution. So for me, I think when I look back at the diversity of the Executive Council, the diversity of our membership, the conflicts within our membership, the steel producer, the machinery versus the machinery manufacturer, versus the component manufacturer, the manufacturer versus the importer. We had to work at keeping people in the room, not walk out of the room, not break the dialogue. It happened, I've had cases where a major member will say, if you don't do it my way, I am resigning tomorrow from the organization and walking out, So we've had those kind of situations. And we had to keep the dialogue going. We had to find a via media acceptable to people. And yet it must not be bland. It must not be a meaningless agreement, It has to be something worthwhile. So keeping people together is a very important part of success in my work. And so that's one level of people as staff I've talked about, but I'm now talking about members. And big members, big egos, I had the chairman of Tata's on my board for 20 years, the chairman of Bajaj Group and so many others, and they don't necessarily see eye to eye. Sometimes they don't even want to look at each other across the table, But we kept them together, and it was hard work. A lot of work has to be done by the secretariat individually with members, because the member must feel that you are impartial. You are not on this side or that side. You are impartial, you are neutral, and you are with everybody. You want the best possible thing. So I had to make sure that the companies may differ with each other, but they felt comfortable, they could trust me, and they could trust my colleagues in the secretariat. And I think that's how we went forward.
Thank you very much.
I totally agree with him, but in bureaucracy, it's slightly more difficult, I should put it. Because you can multiply whatever you said in terms of egos or whatever, and it's many times more. And hence, the trick here is slightly different. The trick here is first to evolve a value proposition for each of these stakeholders. What is in it for him to do what I am asking him to do? It's a very difficult task. Second is the whole approach that you adopt. I'll give you an example. Typically, secretaries to Government of India call meetings in Delhi to solve the state-related problems. And one reason why coal happened, or whatever little that has happened, is an account of our not calling a single meeting in Delhi. Whereas first we evolve the value proposition in terms of what is in it for the states with regard to what I'm offering. And second, going to sell this product or this idea, going to the consumer himself, that is going to the state, and then selling this idea to them at the state headquarters. I think that's made a world of a difference. But let me tell you a slightly different story on fundamentally understanding what ultimately is the bottom line. I use the word kick. All of us do things to get a kick. Why are you doing for a kick? I must narrate an incident to you in this regard. When I was doing this Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, it was hardly recognized within the country. In fact, unfortunately, it is only when yoga becomes yoga, it gets to be recognized in the country of origin. So this scheme was getting a lot of recognition world over. And consequent to which the Obama administration took note of it, and I was invited to Brookings Institute to make a presentation on this health insurance scheme. After the presentation, a gentleman from Gates Foundation approached me during a cup of tea. He asked me, Mr. Swaroop, you are a bureaucrat, why are you so passionate about this? Normally bureaucrats do their job, what additionally are you getting out of it? So I thought over it and asked him a counter question. I asked him, you give millions of dollars to poor countries, what do you get out of it? He said, that's our job, we derive satisfaction. I said, I'm better off than you. I don't spend a single penny from my pocket. Yet all the good wishes of all these poor people somehow anyway come back to me. What could be a better motivation? And I narrated him an incident. I was fond of visiting these medium and small hospitals which were housing these patients. And I remember in one of the visits, I heard a very feeble voice from behind. There was this 100-year-old lady who was beckoning me. She had been told that I had something to do with this scheme. So when I approached her, she said, I asked her, Mata ji, aap theek hain? हाँ बेटा मैं ठीक तो हूँ लेकिन बहुत तकलीफ में हूँ. Then I asked her कि क्या आपको क्या प्रॉब्लम क्या है, क्या समस्या है? बोली अब बेटा मेरी उम्र इतनी हो गई है, ये सब मेरा इतना ख्याल रख रहे हैं अस्पताल वाले, मैं तो अकेली हूँ, मेरी दुनिया में कोई नहीं है, ये मुझे उठा लाए, मेरी बड़ी सेवा कर रहे हैं. Then I told her, माता जी आप ठीक हो जाएंगे जब इतनी सेवा कर रहे हैं. नहीं नहीं बेटा मेरी उम्र हो गई, अब मैं ऊपर वाले के पास जाऊँगी. Then I again told her कि नहीं नहीं हो जाएगी, नहीं नहीं बेटा अब मैं ऊपर वाले के पास जाऊँगी, लेकिन ऊपर वाले से एक बात जरूर कहूँगी, तुम्हारी स्कीम बहुत अच्छी है. Now this is the kick. That was the day when I got my Bharat Ratna. This is the kick that you work for. Now we have to look at the kick that each individual or stakeholder wants to get out of what I have to offer. It's a very difficult job in government, but I have discovered that it is eminently possible to find what the other person is looking into with regard to the proposition that you have. Once you are able to identify that, and once you are able to strategize on how to convey it to him, you are on. You'll be able to do it. So ultimately it is what you got to say, have a very clear idea of what you got to say, to whom you are saying, understand him very clearly, where to say and when to say. These are all very, very important to set your ideas going. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that was an excellent piece of advice to all of us. I have a little bit of personal question for both of you. Given another opportunity to live this life and getting an opportunity to work in your respective fields, what would you do differently than what you did so far? Tarunji.
You know, when I finished university, I thought I would work for a company. And it was by accident, more than by design, that I got into this line. I look back, it is so rewarding to be what I consider is the civil service of industry. To be in an institution of industry working for a large community, because pluses and minuses are there everywhere. And I think this was a great way of service and satisfaction in one's life. So I look back and I say, I've been very lucky. And I'm still lucky. I'm lucky to be here with you, in the same way. Made many mistakes. And people forgave those mistakes or forgot or overlooked those mistakes. So that was also great, because we are all human. So I'm sure each one of us makes mistakes in their life, in their professional life, in their personal life. I'm no exception to that. And I'm sure one learnt as one went along, when you ask this question, what would you do differently? I'd like not to have made so many mistakes, which I made and which I have, I've written about the mistakes that one made, the unfinished agenda that one left behind because you can't finish everything. Could I have could I have created more trust? I just think about that, which would have made us more effective. Maybe that's a question that I have to leave unanswered. We created trust, we created confidence of the industry in the institution, of the government in the institution, of trade unions in the institution. That was a tough one. Sometimes the whole night one had to sit with union leaders, talking, negotiating, listening. But maybe if one had created more trust, because many of the positive things on economic policies, on industrial policies, took a long time to come, to wait a long time. You know, it was frustrating that we knew that, you know, this is the way we have to go, but we were not going, or we were going too slowly as a country. So that may be considered a failure. So maybe one would have liked the country to have moved faster than it did. So to that extent, you know, it's in a bit of a failure, if I can put it that way.
Thank you very much.
God has been extremely kind. I have got more than I deserved in life. Enjoyed every moment. In fact, I have lived those moments. I have enjoyed those moments as I am enjoying now, being with such a wonderful audience and in the company of Mr. Das. If I were to be born again, I'd like to be an IS officer all over again. Because this is the service that gives you an opportunity to be absolutely corrupt, absolutely honest, totally inefficient, extremely efficient. You can do anything under the sun. It gives you the freedom to do it. That's the freedom I would want to do what I would want to do. There's a lot of unfinished agenda, and agendas don't get over. But that's what makes it exciting. If everything is over, then you have arrived, and then you don't have to move. There's so much to learn as one is learning. Perhaps the only regret that I have in life is that I lost my cool more often than I should have. And as one goes, as one becomes wiser, as it were, and reflects on what has happened in the past, perhaps some of it could have been avoided.
I think that could be true with a whole lot of us. We seem to have got gray hair, but have not been able to control our anger many a times. I think that could be true with a whole lot of people sitting here. My next question to both of you is, both of you have talked about confidence on your teams. Both of you have talked about excellent people working under you. Youngsters, 25 years of age, who delivered on what you wanted. And both of you, and Mr. Anil Sarup earlier talked about creating trust in his people, empowering them to take decisions. Now, that sort of confidence building. Mr. Tarun Das, you've written in your book, the 24/7 CII staff. I know some of them, not all of them, very few of them. And they were really 24/7. I admired the way you transferred your philosophy onto the regions and then to the states. And in some small way, every member of the secretariat in the states was a mini Tarun Das trying to work there. How did you motivate your people? And because that could be a practical lesson for each one of us who's a practicing manager. That's a day-to-day problem for us. Motivating our people to deliver their very best. Tarunji.
I think I'm going to go back to something Mr. Anil Swarup said. If you micromanage people, or try to micromanage people, then one is clearly you don't trust them or have confidence in them. But I think there's an even deeper message which I had. Then I don't trust myself. I'm insecure. It's my problem. I am insecure, and therefore I want to check everything. But I am secure. Somebody up there looks after me. Actually, somebody up there looks after all of us. You think of that in that way, and then you trust your people. I've not been let down by people, young, old. Some of the people who were much older than me when I took over at 35, they were uncomfortable. They were wanted to move on to other things, which is fine. There was a generation gap between us. That was an ego thing. They didn't want to work under they were 50, in their 50s, they didn't want to work under a 35-year-old. But we parted company in a nice way, with dignity. I gave them a lot of respect because we are taught to give respect to our elders. But otherwise, I think if you are not insecure yourself, then trust comes easily. If you are insecure yourself, then trust will never come. Confidence will never come. And then once you trust, then you motivate, and then they're ready to, they're ready to go out and conquer the world if you give them that space and that trust, Since I'm with IEEMA, and your Director General was my colleague for many years, I gave him the toughest jobs in CII. We had a crisis in China. Today, China has been talked about in the inaugural session. We had a crisis in China. Deep crisis. Deep, deep crisis. For CII, for Indian industry, for India. I pulled out Sunil Mishra and I parachuted him to Shanghai. Overnight. And over a period of time, he solved the problem. Not just put Band-Aid on it, he healed the problem completely. After he healed the problem, I pulled him out from China. So just one example. But now he is sitting in China, I am sitting in Delhi. In those days, even emails were tough, cell phones were really not there, and how can you talk openly when the man is in China? Everything is being monitored over there. So you have to leave it to that guy on the ground. I'm just mentioning the man but it could have been anyone else in CII. So he had to find his own way of solving the problem, healing the issues, bringing credibility back to the institution and to India. Did that. CII is full of examples like this.
Thank you very much. Anilji, your experience.
I think we have to be honest to ourselves, and as he rightly put it, you have to trust yourself to trust others. Unless you do that, if you don't have confidence in yourself, you won't have confidence in others. So that's the key. But in government, the instruments for motivation are very, very limited. You can't parachute Sunil Mishra to any place. You will be parachuted before that, if you do that. But there are some extremely effective, simple instruments available which we don't use. हम हिंदी में कहते हैं किसी की बुराई करनी हो तो हम मुक्त कंठ से करते हैं. हम किसी की तारीफ मुक्त कंठ से क्यों नहीं करते? I think the best instrument of motivation available is a pat on the back. And if you do that at an appropriate place, छाती चौड़ी हो जाती है. He will lay his life for you. But we don't do that. कंजूसी करते हैं हम. तारीफ करने में कंजूसी करते हैं और गवर्नमेंट में तो और ज़्यादा करते हैं कि मेरा तो नहीं बढ़ जाएगा कहीं. मैंने इसकी तारीफ कर दी. And I admire my minister for that. I mean, बिल्कुल मुक्त कंठ से वो सबकी तारीफ करते हैं, पब्लिकली करते हैं. और कुछ कहना होता है तो प्राइवेटली कह देते हैं. I think in government instruments are limited, but I think we can motivate people within the government. We can motivate anybody. It's a question of having confidence in yourself, having trust in yourself, being honest to yourself. Once you, as you rightly put it, are secure, you will never ever treat a colleague differently.
I want to add one more point. It's not that everybody works out right. So I had a system that if I wanted to sack a guy, 5 o'clock in the evening, Friday, you call him. I sat on the ground floor, and plain sheet of paper and a termination letter. He can choose whether to write his resignation or he can take the termination letter. But that action is taken in extreme cases, particularly if there has been any lack of integrity on the part of the person. And that message then goes through the whole organization that integrity is not to be compromised. Sorry, I just wanted to add that.
The next two questions, which are the two last questions, are for IEEMA. Sir, Anil. Anilji, you have visited ILECRAMA 2014. You've been highly supportive of IEEMA for organizing an exhibition of that order. You've talked about it to many people in very positive terms. Tarunji, we've not had the privilege of inviting you. Let me use this forum. I used this forum to invite the minister, and he agreed, and I'm sure if I invite you, you are not going to say no. You're going to agree to me also today. You can't break my heart. How can you do that? But having said that, and I did talk in the morning during my address to the minister about the new things we have added to ILECRAMA. And Tarunji, when you moved over to Delhi from Calcutta, where there was merger of two associations, you took the challenge of creating the Indian Engineering Trade Fair. It was done on a 3 months notice, a 4 months notice, something like that, at very, very short notice. And that was the edition 1. Now everybody looks forward to it. It still continues. The government, the private sector, the exhibitors, the visitors, everybody looks towards it. If you were to advise IEEMA on what to do more in ILECRAMA, what would that advice be?
Why don't you listen to Mr. Anil Swarup first? Because
Okay.
he has he's been exposed to ILECRAMA, and then I'll come in.
Can I give a small introduction about Mr. Anil Swarup's reaction in ILECRAMA 14? I had the privilege of taking him around in ILECRAMA 2014. He was delighted to see what he saw over there. And just one mention. When we took him to our innovation center, where young students had put up their projects, and when I told him those numbers, that something like 5,000 had applied, whatever, I don't remember now, and we screened and got 1,200 numbers, out of which we've accommodated some 500 numbers or something. Something like that, that was the figure. And believe me, he went around a whole lot of stalls he couldn't have. In fact, he spent most time over there rather than the stalls of our members. And he said, I've seen it for the first time happening. Carry it more. Think of other things that you can do in this space. Anil Bhai.
Thank you very much. I think I don't have much to offer, because if anyone learned on that day, it was I. I learned a lot on that day. I could never imagine that such sort of an exhibition could happen in India. I could never imagine that so many youngsters could be encouraged. For me, these youngsters are the future of the country. And if any association can think in terms of encouraging them and bringing them forth, nothing could be better than that. What I would suggest is one of the biggest challenges this country faces, and there is the answer could come from anybody. Youngsters have a fertile mind, they could think. We are going in a big way in solar energy, huge. The problem which Tesla is trying to address is how to store that energy, that solar energy. If some institutes or some youngsters could get around and work on it, they may or may not find a solution, but it's well worth a try. If we crack that, I tell you, we would have cracked our energy problem. But that's an issue that we have to look into. That is one. Number two, I think government is extremely, I'm so glad Secretary Energy is with us and he'll talk more about it. Government is extremely committed to setting the energy sector right. And organization like yours can actually contribute quite substantially in coming up with a framework, a workable framework that could then be implemented. Because you know where the shoe pinches, you know how it could be done. I would suggest make use of the presence of Secretary Energy and have a very intensive, separate, interactive session with him in terms of what value could you all bring on table for taking it forward, because the minister, the secretary, all are extremely committed to finding a solution to this problem of ACBs on how to set that sector right. I have not seen that commitment in years of my experience. The Prime Minister, the Secretary, everyone is at it. They are very intensively interacting with the state governments. I think association like yours can contribute substantially to that.
In fact, that was my last question, and the last question is simple, but the answer is difficult. And that's why it's to you, Mr. Das. What is your advice to IEEMA? The direction in which IEEMA should go next 10 years. What's your advice? Where can we reach? What should the future leadership, why future? Future, present, past leadership of IEEMA aim at achieving 10 years from today for this sector? Tarunji.
I just want to say something about Electrama. I would love to visit it because I've heard so much about it, and I've heard great things about Electrama over the years. I've never had the opportunity to visit it, and I would love to do it if given the opportunity. And for Electrama, I would like to give a vision. I don't know which are the other Electrama type of fairs in the world today. Germany is, of course, the kind of nation of the best trade fairs, but there may be others also. So my vision for Electrama would be, is it the best in the world? It must be the best in the world. IEEMA must be seen as organizing the #1 electrical equipment trade fair in the world. That's bottom line. That can be defined and broken down to different things, and I think you can achieve that. And on Electrama, I want to add to what Mr. Swaroop said. Over the last 2 years, I have been visiting research laboratories in USA who are working on battery technology for storage of power. It's funded by the federal government, the state of New York, and also the universities in New York State. And I was very impressed with the kind of work being done. So I immediately thought, got to get India into this, Indian industry into this. So I went to one of the largest companies, Indian companies in this country. And the bureaucracy of that company made sure that nothing happened. Private sector company, by the way, not a public sector company, private sector company in Bombay, in the energy business. Then I went to a second company, which is smaller but well known, not in the energy business, but in the manufacturing business, and more of a family-owned, family-driven, promoter-driven company. Got them to go to New York, see the place, meet the people, and I'm happy to tell you that they have invested millions of dollars in the project. So, you see, Chinese were trying to get in there, and my interest was get the Indians in, and keep the Chinese out. So, this is a very good development. In fact, the professor and the person who's leading that entire research and all that will be in Delhi on Monday and Tuesday. And I'll be very happy to arrange for any meetings if there's any interest with the government of India. And that part could be added to IEEMA. Not only that particular project, but there are other projects going on, as you said, in California and elsewhere. So that could be an additional dimension in IEEMA. Now to your last question of, see, the power problem of this country is huge, continues to be huge, all right? So I don't know enough, so I'm giving a general statement. It is perceived to be a massive problem of this country. Apart from what the government is trying to do, and is trying to do many things, a lot of effort is going into that. I'm happy to see that some of the stressed assets, that is the projects which were not getting fulfilled, are being bought over by somebody or the other. I read NTPC is buying something, somebody else is buying something. Maybe that will help to expedite implementation of the projects. But which is the association in this country which is connected to the power sector? Which is the institution? For me, IEEMA is an institution. You're more than an association, you're an institution. So for me, I would like to see IEEMA take ownership of the power agenda of this country. And so I don't know, maybe you are already doing everything that you can do, but I can't believe you're doing everything you can do. I believe you can do more. And you can do more in partnership with the government to help to solve the power problem. Find creative solutions, find different ways of doing it, whether it's big projects, whether it's decentralized energy. One of the think tanks that I had founded 5 years ago was the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, CEEW. So I got an economist from Princeton University to come back, an Indian, to come back and set it up, do a vision paper. In the last 5 years, they've done amazing work on research side, on energy, environment and water, and maybe the IEEMA can see what they do, and if it is of interest, collaborate with them. But there are different institutions working in this field. So not that you have to do everything. You can tap into different resources to do it. But for me, IEEMA in the next 5 to 10 years, why can't it be the institution from the private sector, which is the lead institution to solve the power problem of this country, working with the government? Why can't it be? Because this is your business. This is your core business. This is maybe a bit of CII's business, a bit of FICCI's business, a bit of ASSOCHAM, but this is the heart and the gut of what you are all about. So I would say get stuck into the power issue, create a strong internal task force, create a secretariat for it, work with different people, see what's happening in the world, and work in partnership with government to solve the power problem.
I think I have to thank you for that great insight. I'm sure my colleagues are here, and they would have mentally made a note of it. Anilji, I want your inputs on this subject. What do you think?
I would have said exactly what he said. I think the domain of IEEMA has to increase. You can't be only nuts and bolts association. You have to look at the larger picture which impacts your nuts and bolts. So if the larger picture doesn't improve, then your nuts and bolts will not be sold. So the key is, if the SEBs are not in a position to purchase things, then what are you for? I mean, you can keep manufacturing things, nothing will go, whether it's transformers or whatever. So fundamental problem is with the SEBs. Now the key here is whether you can provide support to the government in terms of bringing this change about. And as I said earlier, the government is extremely committed to that, because the writing is on the wall. If that doesn't improve, we could all be in serious trouble. So I think the government and you should join hands in terms of taking it forward.
Friends, we are at the end of this formal interview, and I would like to open the floor for questions. One small request: let it be questions, pinpointed questions, no long suggestions. We have about 20 minutes for this session. on question answer. And my request is that if you could also introduce yourself, that would be great. The floor is open.
Is on? Yeah, can I? Yeah, Good afternoon. My name is Vishwas Tendulkar. I'm a regional director of global body called IEEMA, International Project Management Association. Both the eminent speakers have given a lot of takeaway. My question is, Make in India calls for change of mindset at public sector as well as private sector in terms of time, cost, scope, and quality. Private sector is trying to understand this. I would like to know what is the efforts being done at the public sector, which is very difficult.
I think the intention of the government has been clearly outlined at the topmost level. And that's the message that has gone down to every organization of the government, be it public sector or the government itself. I can't talk about other sectors, but in the coal sector, where I'm coal secretary, I think the change is very visible. What has happened in past few months bears testimony to the fact that we are totally committed to taking it forward, whatever we are doing, whether it is in terms of coal production in absolute numbers, whether it is terms of improving quality, whether it is in terms of bringing in efficiency. I think the roadmap has been clearly outlined. Most of it is available on the net. You can actually go and see how Coal India plans to reach the target of 1 billion ton, and so on and so forth. So the commitment is there. A lot of movement has also happened, but I'm sure there's a lot more to be done, and it's work in progress.
Just to add that the private sector has a lot to do also. I'll just stop there.
Good afternoon.
We've taken the hint, sir. Yeah. The next caller.
Should I talk?
No, over there.
Good afternoon. In fact, this was a very insightful philosophical session by wise men on the DS. My name is Dr. Nitin Parab. I am CEO and evangelist with a company called Crosslink International. And we are working at the grassroots levels with the MSMEs today, giving knowledge sessions. My question to you, to both of you all out there, is what is the strategic viewpoint of bringing glory to the nation, not a country, to a nation, through bringing all the different factors of culture, values, ethos, ethics together to bring India on the forefront of global economy?
This is almost above my pay grade, as the Americans would say. You mentioned MSME. I just want to say that small and medium industry is terribly important. I'm so glad that you're having a session on that in the afternoon. They are the backbone of industry in this country. They're not getting enough attention. They're not getting enough support. And I don't mean incentives and all. And I think that whole reservation policy was crazy because it inhibited their growth. But I think the MSME part of the puzzle must be put right for our Make in India, for economic growth, for industrial growth, and all of that. And by the way, the job creation is there because at the bigger level, it's all automation, it's all robots, and all of that. So it is the MSME sector which is critical in right across the economy.
I think this whole segmentation of small, medium, and large was done in a particular context. The context has undergone a change. I think we'll have to have a relook at this whole, because by segmenting it, we unnecessarily brought these artificial barriers to movement from one position to the other. And having worked in the labor ministry for good 7 years, I realized what damage it has done. The concerned minister will be there in the afternoon. Probably the vision part you can ask him. He probably will be in a better position to answer that. But I would suggest to you particularly to you and others sitting here, that though we may be talking a lot of philosophy, I think the focus has to be on what that individual institution or individual person is doing. I mean, there's so many people too bothered about what has had to happen to the nation and to the country. A country is constituted by individuals like us, institutions like us, if we can for the time being forget about, thinking too much about the larger issues and focus on what is the task at hand, and each one of us has a task at hand, probably the nation will improve. That's my view. There could be a difference of opinion. The focus has to be there. Sometimes, I hope there are no journalists around, sometimes we tend to become journalists, passing judgment on what others are doing. Almost every institution is talking about the other institution. Every individual is talking about other institutions. We stopped looking at the mirror.
Yeah, I'm Ramesh Chandak, past president of past president of IEEMA and director of KEC. See, today we're just talking about the IEEMA and the exhibitions. Today, India does not have a single exhibition center of world class. None of them. Such a large country. I know that how IEEMA is struggling to really organize, and we really organize in tents because we don't have a large enough exhibition center. What, I think request to both of you suggestion, what can as India do to at least have 1 or 2 centers, because if you look other countries, look China there may be 10, US there can be 30 like that. India does not have a single one. So I think what can we do by which government allots the land and we pull all the associations together and ask them to sponsor the various halls so that we really have an international standard exhibition center.
I think the suggestion is very well taken. This has been, if my information is correct, is being argued and debated in the government. And the Ministry of Commerce is the ministry that looks into it. But I thought when I went to IEEMA, and I was in the same compound yesterday, FEMA, that's a tremendous place where we can have actually state-of-the-art and world-class exhibition center. I hope the concerned people in the government look to it. I take your message, I'll convey it to my colleagues there and see if something could happen.
Your IEEMA next year is in Bangalore. That is a private sector exhibition ground set up by a sister association of yours, Indian Machine Tool Manufacturers Association. They have raised money from Exim Bank, from other banks, from companies to create that facility. They are expanding into phase 2 now, getting land. I think we keep on, if we keep on looking to government all the time, I think it's a no-win game. So why not IEEMA become a joint owner of that exhibition ground? Why don't you get in there and the joint resources of IEEMA and IMTMA? I mean, you can conquer the world. I mean, I'm just giving an idea because you asked a question that think differently, because you're not going to get land easily in this country. You're not going to be able to have, government has been discussing this so much. I've been involved with Commerce Ministry discussions on this, Trade Fair Authority of India, Delhi government, you name it. And it's a intractable problem there. But you have a facility in Bangalore. Land has been acquired there, paid for. It's owned by an association. It's a sister association of yours, also making equipment, also making machines, as it happens. Also originally based in Bombay. So there's a lot of, and I'm sure perhaps there's some common membership also, I don't know. Why don't you all think about partnership and think differently?
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I know this is just 2 last questions. I've got a message that Kalrajji has come to the hotel, and we'll have to break because Kalrajji is here. Vijay Bhai.
Thank you, sir. My name is Vijay Karya. I represent the Ravin Group. My question to both you gentlemen, with your vast experience, is that today we have seen that the PPP model is virtually failed because of the lack of transparency, the lack of trust that the private sector and the government both have in each other. What would be the best way going forward to rectify this? Because as Mr. Das said, the private sector will have to do a lot more. But then the other problem also is that they are faced with their own sets of problems where some of the conditions in the contracts are very unfair. So how would this go ahead?
I would correct you slightly. The PPP model has not failed. That model of PPP has failed. Because I'm a great believer in PPP, whether social sector or infrastructure, wherever. And one reason, because I've had the occasion to look at some of these models when I was heading the project monitoring group, was that when we formulate these models, at that point in time, we don't take stakeholders into confidence. So we formulate a model and give it to you. Look at what we tried to do in coal auctions. And the one reason why it went off well was, every document was discussed upfront. Everyone was taken on board before we finalized that document. And that is why those 3 and 4 people who've gone to the court are extremely jittery. Because everything was upfront discussed. This is something which did not happen. Because, you know, when I sit in the government, sometimes I assume that I have all the wisdom, which I don't. So we should participate, have a participatory discussion on each of the documents. I can assure you public-private partnership is the way forward for this country, whether it's public, whether it is infrastructure, even social sector. In fact, one of the biggest successes of public-private model was that insurance scheme that I talked about, partly funded by the government, implemented by the private sector in a competitive mode, and worked brilliantly. So it's a question of how do we get the people who are ultimately going to execute that project involved in formulation of a policy, in formulation of a document. I think fundamentally that was wrong. When we subsequently had discussions with those people, they came up with such valid suggestions, which should have been there in the first place in the document, were not there because they were not even aware which document is coming. Suddenly that document was given to them, and everyone, like it happens, everyone rushes into it. And there I mean, private sector has to share the blame. Without even reading the document properly, they rushed into it and came a cropper. In fact, at that point in time, association should have gone ahead and said, how can you do that? You said 80% land should be acquired before it is handed over. 80% land is not acquired. How are you starting it all? But no one said that because they were up against each other. They wanted to somehow grab it. We should learn from our mistakes. They were mistake committed. And that's why I say that's not that the public-private sector model failed. That model of public-private sector failed.
No, I agree with.
Sir, I have a question.
Good afternoon.
I'll bring a. Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. It's been a wonderful session. My name is Saif Qureshi, Managing Director of Crifts Power Components. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Swaroop, that the first time I think in India, 3 ministries have been given to 1 minister. What kind of impact has it had in the efficiency of 3 ministries? And Mr. Das, whether there are more ministries where this thing could be tried out, because I think there's a synergy between the 3 ministries. And I'm sure that some great benefit must have come out of what has been done by the government.
It has worked wonders. It's total seamless interaction with the ministries. Power and coal ministries are working totally in tandem. If there are any issues, we sit across the table and sort it out, as they would be, because they're 2 different ministries. But having a same minister is that if we have a different opinion, we sit with them and sort it out. And that's why the pace of activity is much faster if you have such a situation.
There must be a ministry for manufacturing. Mr. Swaroop mentioned, you may have not noticed it, these divisions between different sectors should not be there. MSME is what? Manufacturing. Heavy industry is what? Manufacturing. So what are we doing here? We've got to integrate, we've got to put these together and have a ministry for all these manufacturing industries together. You see the difference in government's effectiveness, its policies, and how industry will benefit.
I think yeah, that's the place where, yeah.
Yeah, I am bringing a very different dimension to this discussion here. I represent an education fraternity. I am Dhanshekaran from Chitkara University. Sir, actually last 5 years, what has happened in this country is more than 20% of electrical engineering seats were surrendered back. And this year, alarmingly, 11% of seats again surrendered. So, which is bringing totally 33% of engineering seats, particularly in electrical engineering, has been surrendered back. So, moving forward, in next 5 years, you will find this country producing only the IT engineers and computer science engineers, and it is going to be very alarming. That is because there is no proved consumption pattern, and it is very erratic, and there is no demand. This being the Apex organization, and we have taken an initiative to be part of this meet to bring this message all across to everybody's ears to understand this country in next 5 years or 6 years, if this trend goes the way it is going, you will not find any technical institution producing electrical engineer in this country. So I want to understand from the panel and from IEEMA, what is the initiative that is being taken to understand this alarming situation?
I would have wished somebody else to reply. I was in a mood for asking questions only. But okay, I'll take that responsibility, sir. I totally agree with you, Chandrasekhar. And again, it's a part of that problem which I mentioned in the morning. Not that I'm trying to shift the blame. But when the demand for electrical engineers came, and I'm one myself, so I have a special love for electrical engineering. We thought that we worked on some pattern that this is going to be the requirement. This shall be the growth in the private sector. This shall be the requirement in the government sector, in the utility sector, whichever government or private, wherever they are. Somehow for reasons now known to everybody, admitted by the Honorable Minister in the morning session, that has not happened. Now, I think that's one reason why people are not opting. Second reason, and that's my personal view, I stand to correction by you, I'm no academician, but what I saw in my own city of Lucknow, they've got some 50 engineering institutes producing deplorable quality of engineers. Deplorable. I don't get an IIT fellow to come and work in my company, sir. So I'm probably one of the city's largest recruiter for electrical engineers in Lucknow. And because of my love for electrical engineer, the last interview of that engineer is with me. Purely academic interest that I have. It's pathetic. Pathetic. How do you expect industry? That's a part of a larger problem. I'm not trying to shift the blame. How do you expect the industry to teach a fresher what he was supposed to learn in the 5-year or the 4-year academic program? And I think it's unemployability. CI was also apprised of this issue. Unemployability of the graduates that we are producing. So, pathetic. If an engineer from any of these institutes is lucky enough to get a job in IT sector, he gets 30,000 rupees to start with. If some manufacturing industry picks him up for Bombay, he gets, 15, 17, 18. If he gets a job in Lucknow, in a manufacturing industry, it's at 12, 14, something. If he doesn't get a job anywhere, he goes back to one of those institutes and becomes a teacher. Believe me, at 8,000 rupees. Sir, my chaprasi charges me more than 8,000 rupees today, sir. Believe me, I'm not making a fun of it. This fellow doesn't know himself. What would he teach? I think it's a part of a larger problem. You can't sort it out in silos, that only electrical engineer, management and electrical engineering, I think somebody has to think afresh at this problem. I don't know if I've answered your question, what you asked. One last question, this gentleman over there, yeah, please, but that's really the last one, because I'm getting messages that we have to end this.
Yeah, good afternoon to the distinguished guests. One question I always had in mind is MSMEDs consume a lot of time while getting themselves registered in a public sector enterprise. Can you throw some light on the ways to really cut back on that time? Because what we generally face is almost 6-7 months are consumed in getting ourselves registered. So, just wanted.
I'll answer this. I don't know if you were there for the morning session. Were you there when Mr. Anand Gite was here?
Yeah.
My takeaway from Anand Gite ji is that he assured that IEEMA should come to him. Probably he had a complaint against me that I was not going there more often. I was spending more time with Rajesh and Mr. Katoj. But the public sector undertakings come directly under him. I have two requests to make to you. Make a small paper in writing on what the problem is. Make another paper on what the solution you think is. We'll try to have a inside discussion within IEEMA. I'm sure there are a lot of our members who also supply to the public sector undertakings and who have similar issues. Reach a consensus and then make a request with Mr. Geete कि साहब वो आप हमें सुषमा जी के पास और हमें जेटली जी के पास तो बाद में ले आइएगा, पहले तो ये कर दीजिए जो आपकी कलम से होना है. We'll do that. Thank you very much, friends. Just a minute, please, 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 please. I have to make my concluding remarks. So we'll do it offline. We'll do it offline. I'm there with you. So are they. I would like to end on a personal note. It's been a great, great, satisfying experience for me. Let me tell you your wish. Secret number 2 being let out. Anil Swarup, yes, I did have an opportunity of knowing him, meeting him for 20 years. Tarun Das, I saw him either on the TV screen or the CII national meet. Never had this opportunity of sitting so close to each other. And that was a dream which has come true today, sir. It's a dream come true. But more than that, I think it's been a great learning experience. The vision we have to create in the industry. What we are having a faith in ourselves of being able to achieve something at the end of the day. I think a whole lot of us have turned pessimistic, and especially when we talk of, we do business with government utilities. And the usual refrain is, kuch nahi hoga bhai, kuch nahi hona, koi karta rahe. Now, and we also become cynical listening to that. I think the only thing that I'll take away from this session with these two gentlemen is, if we change, we carry other IEEMA members to lose that cynicism and believe that things can happen. And let's see if we can make a change. Probably one day, things can change. Thank you very much. I've got a small announcement to make. I personally requested that about 50 copies of Crossing Frontiers, the book authored by Mr. Tarun Das, is kept on the counter. Anyone having interest to buy it, please have a look. I'll just tell you another secret number 3. When I knew this book had come, I took it thinking I'll read it at leisure. I tried to I finished the whole thing virtually reading it the whole night because I couldn't just leave it for the next day. Next day I must have slept, I don't know, in the office. I recommended that the President-elect of IEEMA should read it. It should be compulsory reading for Babu. Babu tells me he's read it 1.5 times. I could understand once, I could understand it too. What is this 1.5 times? I have yet to find out from Babu. Maybe you find it that engrossing. And all of you, or any one of you, who've had something to do with the association, who are doing something with the association, whichever level, wherever you are, you'd find it of immense value. Thank you, gentlemen, for being such a wonderful audience. And thanks once again to my 2 great visitors. Sir, you have enriched IEEMA by your presence here. I'm sure when I get down the dais, all my friends are going to tell me, Agli baar kab bula rahe ho in logo. Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of a very thought-provoking session. We shall be breaking for lunch and reassembling at 2 p.m. sharp. There is a very interesting session with Sri Kalraj Mishra, the Honorable Union Minister for MSME, which will also be attended by the Secretary Power, the CMDs of SIDBI and Exim Bank, and the Additional Chief Secretary Energy, the Government of Karnataka. Please proceed for lunch at the foyer, and we will reconvene at 2 p.m. sharp. Thank you.